Believe it or not, we have more bacterial cells in our bodies than human cells. You may ask yourself, oh, well, if there's more bacterial cells than human cells, then how are we more human than bacteria? Why don't we look like one big bacteria? So the gut microbiome and the bugs that live inside and outside of our body literally code for disease or health. Now, whether it's obesity, whether it's diabetes, whether it's heart disease, whether it's dementia, whether it's neurological issues, and for sure, gut health issues, and very much so mental health issues, emotional issues, sleep, everything is encoded in our microbiome. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Good Gut Feeling Podcast, where we digest modern medicine with old world wisdom. Today, we have another exciting topic that really is so cutting edge. I'm sure many of you have heard about it. Before we jump right in, just a quick couple of words. Today's episode and all the prior episodes are for educational purposes only. They don't take the place of medical advice from your doctor. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about the gut microbiome. The gut microbiome is the cutting edge of research right now, and I'm sure all of you have heard about it. But what is it really? The gut microbiome is the collection of bugs that live inside and outside of our bodies. Really, it's everywhere. It's on our skin. It's predominantly in our gut, but it's really everywhere. It's in our mouths. It's in our reproductive system, very present in the vaginal canal. The largest amount of these bugs are in our large intestine, and they literally are responsible for almost every single function in our bodies. So the gut microbiome and the bugs that live inside and outside of our body literally code for disease or health. Now, whether it's obesity, whether it's diabetes, whether it's heart disease, whether it's dementia, whether it's neurological issues, and for sure, gut health issues, and very much so mental health issues, emotional issues, sleep, everything is encoded in our microbiome. Right now, we're a little bit in the baby stages of it. We're just learning how important it is, how much is associated with, how many things rely on the microbiome. So what do we need in our microbiome? What is the microbiome? First of all, what is it? What is it? So, well, it's trillions of bugs. Those bugs are bacteria, they're viruses, they're fungi, they're actually even a little bit of protozoa. But a lot of times we talk about the bacteria. And believe it or not, we have more bacterial cells in our bodies than human cells. You may ask yourself, oh, well, if there's more bacterial cells than human cells, then how are we more human than bacteria? Why don't we look like one big bacteria? Well, the bacterial cells are very, very small. Bacterial cells are a different type of cell than human cells. So the human cells are something called eukaryotes, which is the more advanced type of cell with different compartments. And the bacteria are more primitive type cells called prokaryotes. They're actually much smaller. So even though we have more of them, they're smaller. So therefore, we still look like a human than more like a human than a bacteria, even though we have many, many more bacterial cells. So what do we want? What do we know they live there. What do we want about them? What is desirable for us to have in our microbiome? Number one is diversity. Diversity. We want to have a diverse population of bugs. Diversity is associated with health. So once we shrink the different populations, there's less of them, there's more of the same kind, that's less beneficial. So we want a diverse population. Some of these bugs we want in larger amounts, some of them we want in smaller amounts. We are starting to learn about which are correlated with what. And with the help of AI, actually, we're learning a lot more. We know that there's certain bugs associated with certain conditions. We know that certain bugs we want more of and certain bugs we want less of. But to this day, we don't know exactly what causes what. We know correlations. And there's so much research out there. There's thousands of papers published every month. Now with AI, we're able to actually see much more, compile the data and really get a better understanding. I really think that the future medicine is going to be microbiome medicine. Right now, we know patterns. We know associations. We kind of know the things that make it better. How do we utilize this information to create health in our body? Number one, just as everything else, it's the food we eat. What do the bugs like to eat? The bugs have food that they also like to eat. And the food that they eat actually synthesizes good products that are good for us. So the byproducts of these food is good for us. So what kind of food do we want to feed these bugs in order for them to make the stuff that we need? Most of that is plant-based fiber. We've talked about fiber in the past. Fiber is predominantly found in plant-based foods. Both a soluble fiber and insoluble fiber is found in most of these plant-based foods, and they have different functions. Soluble fiber is the one that actually forms like a gel-like substance in our gut, and that's the main one that these bugs like to eat. They digest it and they make good byproducts that help us depending on what we eat, depending on which bug is digesting. They make different byproducts. Those byproducts are helpful for us because they help synthesize vitamins, minerals, anti-inflammatory products. They really help our digestive process. They help many different processes, which we're going to go into in just a minute. However, we also want insoluble fiber. And insoluble fiber is not really for the bugs to eat, but the insoluble fiber, we don't really digest very well, or the bugs also don't digest it very well, but it helps push things through. So we do want things to move in our gut. That's also a very big part of gut health, is we want movement. We don't want to keep that waste in there. So what happens is we eat food, we start to digest it, mixes with all these fluids in the stomach and the small intestine, starts absorbing the nutrients. But when it gets to the large intestine, it is liquid. So what is the job of the large intestine? Is to reabsorb the water. When we reabsorb the water, we want to, the balance is really to keep enough water to push the stool through, and also to, keep the body hydrated. So there's a balance. If we don't drink enough water, that can actually lead to gut health problems like constipation, for example, because the body will prioritize reabsorbing the water for the body to keep the body hydrated and lessen the stool. The stool can be hard. And what does fiber do? Fiber actually adds bulk and it helps push it through. So you probably have heard, people taking supplementary fiber for constipation, but really this is something that we can do by eating the right foods. We're talking about insoluble fiber can really help push things through. So let's go back to the gut microbiome. What else does it do that's super important? You have probably heard of terms such as gut feeling. The name of this podcast is Good Gut Feeling. I have butterflies in my stomach. I feel it in my gut. We often connect the gut to the brain, and that's for a reason, because there's many connections between the brain and the gut. I often talk about how the brain affects the gut, and there's many neurologic connections between the brain and the gut. These gut bugs do something very, very important. They synthesize neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are chemicals that communicate with the brain. One very important one is called serotonin. And serotonin is actually very much associated with being happy, having energy. If you know anyone who's on antidepressant meds, the common ones are called SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. They essentially increase the amount of serotonin in our body because the serotonin is a feel-good type of neurotransmitter. Well, guess what? 90% of serotonin is produced by the bugs in our gut. So that's how important the microbiome is. It's definitely a huge part of digestive health, definitely a huge part of immune health, because there's a massive part of our immune system that's located in our gut. It's our mental health, it's metabolism. So the next question is, one, how do we know what's in our microbiome? And two, what do we do about it? And those are important. So we talked about food. Food is 1, 2, and 3, because this is literally the fuel that we put not only in our bodies, the fuel that feeds the bugs. How do we ascertain what our microbiome is? If we have gut symptoms, most likely our gut microbiome is not perfect. So do we need to take a test? There's lots of tests out there. I have found one good one that I actually like, which is AI based, but most of the time we can get a lot of information just based on how we feel. So if we feel bloated, if we feel constipated, if we feel diarrhea, if we have low energy, most like our microbiome is really a player here. And then we can really deduce of what we're doing wrong. Sometimes the test is helpful, especially this AI based test, which hopefully we'll talk about in one of the future episodes. It can really give us an idea of the specific kind of foods to eat, the specific kind of exercises to do, and really like lifestyle changes to change these populations of bugs in order to create health. But really we can often ascertain that clinically. So let's say someone's having digestive issues, bloating, gas, etc. Many times there's a issue with the microbiome, whether it's diversity, the good bugs, the bad bugs, something's off. Then we start going back to the source. How do we help the microbiome? So we talked about eating fiber-rich foods, because these are prebiotics. Prebiotics are what feed the bug. Probiotics, they're helpful, but they're not everything. They can kind of assist in the process of helping the microbiome become more robust as we do it from the inside out. They don't do it on their own. So it's not like you can take your antibiotics, which are potent inhibitors in the microbiome and need to be taken with caution when needed, and eat junk and take a probiotic. It does not work like that. It is an assistant. So sometimes probiotics are good. I often recommend them, but they need to be taken with a grain of salt. Best kind of probiotic foods are fermented foods. Fermented foods, you get the prebiotic and the probiotic in one. My favorite, the one I love the most, fermented beets. You can ferment many different vegetables, carrots, cucumbers, cabbage. Yogurt is a fermented dairy. Dairy we have to be very selective with, but really the fermentation process allows the bugs to grow. Depending on the kind of food it is, the different bugs will grow, and you also often get the prebiotic because a lot of times probiotic foods also have a lot of fiber, allowing to be prebiotics. You get 2 in 1. Prebiotics, probiotics. Skip the junk foods. They really don't have any value. They actually hurt your microbiome. The more processed, the ultra processed, once we start really getting far out from the way nature intended, those are definitely microbiome enemies. Don't take them. Don't really focus on the whole foods. Focus on least processed, most natural, least preservatives, chemicals, etc., etc., etc. And then we're going back to even more of the basics. Sleep. Sleep changes affect your microbiome. Good sleep, early sleep, getting enough sleep, getting high quality sleep, vital. Stress. Of course, stress can negatively affect our microbiomes. Stress can negatively affect our microbiome in a profound way. So don't think it's something small. Oh, I'll eat healthy, but I'm worried about stuff all day. No, we have to actively work on that. And we do have some control of that by creating a routine, by meditating, all this stuff that I've talked about. It really works wonders on your microbiome, which is the interface of your health and your lifestyle. Your lifestyle affects your health, and in between almost everything is the microbiome. Right now, we're really just scratching the surface. And some of the more targeted treatments that we're doing for the microbiome are stool transplants. You probably have heard of them. We're literally taking stool from one person to another, giving it to another. And we assume that the person's healthier, and it works wonders for many conditions. For ulcerative colitis, for Clostridium difficile colitis, really can work wonders for treatment resistant, especially because this is what it's used for. It's still a little bit on an experimental side. Problem is, since we know so little about it, it's still experimental. We don't know everything to screen for in the donor because we know the microbiome is a very powerful, important part of health that just kind of giving someone else's microbiome can give good and the bad. So I think we're still in the baby stages of it. We really are just learning about the importance of it. What I recommend to my patients is do the basics first. Most of the time, that's going to be enough. Take care of your stress, eat right, eat your prebiotics, eat your probiotics, eat your healthy foods, sleep, stay hydrated. Those are the ultimate players in keeping your microbiome healthy, keeping yourself healthy, and really root cause treatment for when we are not well. Thanks for tuning in this week. I look forward to seeing you all next week. Stay healthy, stay gutsy. If you like what you hear, we have so much more on our website at wholegut.com. Follow us on Instagram, follow us on YouTube, and see you next week.